Hi everyone, I just wanted to do a quick tutorial on how to write your DBQ styled paragraphs for tonight. I know I had a lot of questions in class about it, and I just wanted to make sure you guys are completely clear about what is expected for this assignment. And then I hope that this tutorial can actually be a way for you to visually see how your essay needs to be structured. So first and foremost, let's take a look at our prompt. So the prompt is located on Canvas. And if you see here on the screen, your prompt is evaluate the extent to which religion was used to develop social and political structures in classical India. Now, if you've done your reading already and you've looked at the document for this particular DBQ, which your document is called The Laws of Manu, which is also located on Canvas, you know that in India, there's actually this caste system. And the caste system has four different castes, four different classes, including this class down here called the Untouchables. Now, these classes are divided into Brahmins, which are priests and teachers. We have our kings and warriors. We have here our landowners and merchants. And then down here we have our commoners and servants. Okay, so if you know that there's this caste system, you know that this caste system is actually reinforced by Hinduism. And Hinduism is an ancient religion, and in your reading it states that Hinduism actually came into the area of India actually in the epic period, where we don't really have a lot of evidence or written documentation of this time period, but we do have those epics, those epic poems. And those epic poems definitely note kind of the foundational principles of Hinduism. And one of those foundations is that there's a caste system. Now, your reading also notes that under the Mauryan Empire, and even under the Gupta empires or dynasties, the caste was actually reinforced to maintain order in these rising and falling dynasties. So this is really similar to China. China during the era of warring states was having some growing pains. And so Confucius and Taoism brought an ideology or some sort of standard of order for peace and justice. So a lot of the rulers of these early dynasties in India also brought their perception or their perspective of order for peace and justice through the light of Hinduism. So that's kind of the foundation of your DBQ. So I'm going to erase all of this, and we're going to get started on actually writing your DBQ. So if you want to pull up your DBQ template, and just so you guys know, that template looks something like this. Oops, that's not going to be very helpful to you. But your template should look something like this. It has actually every single, it should have every single thing laid out for you. So if you want to follow along with me, that would, I think, would be really useful for you as we go through this process. So it should look like something like this. So first and foremost, we are going to focus on the introduction. So if you go to your own sheet of paper, how this should look is you should have an indent, and then you should start with your context. So you could start by saying like, in India during ... and you give me the rest of your context. And remember, your context is always going to come from your first T chart. Your who, what, when, where, how, and why. You should have two T charts, one for context and one for content, coming from your source, which your source is document 1, the Laws of Manu. Okay, so that's where your context should come from, and that's what you should write in this first part. But for right now, we're just going to, I'm not going to write the context for you because that's something that needs to come from your own brain. And I know you guys can all do that, but I'm just showing you guys how to get started. Then the second part of your introduction should be your thesis. Your thesis should have an argument, some sort of transition word that gets you into giving me 1, 2, 3 justifications, usually from your Persian principles, that supports your argument. So, if my prompt is evaluate the extent to which religion provided social and political structure in classical India, then you're going to start your thesis off using that prompt. So you would say Hinduism, which is the religion we're referring to, developed social and political structures in classical India by ... So we're going to have to go into the text and figure out 3 different ways that Hinduism developed social and political structures. Now, I'm not going to go into the text with you because that's something you need to discover on your own, but I will give you 3 hints. One should have to do with something about how the Brahmins or the priests are divine leaders or rulers. Another one should have to do with how rulers / kings are treated. And then another one should have to do with how commoners and servants are treated. Okay, so you give me that 1, 2, 3. Hinduism developed social and political structures in classical India by doing these 1, 2, 3 things. 1, 2, 3 things. Okay, this is your argument. All right, so you want to make sure that you're keeping in mind the prompt and keeping in mind the argument that religion played a role in creating some sort of structure. Remember, you want to definitely use classical China as an example. Classical China utilized Confucianism in order to maintain order. Classical India instituted Hinduism. So definitely keep that in mind as you're writing. Okay, so now that we have our intro pretty much structured, let's talk about our next paragraph. So you're only doing 1 paragraph. And so we're going to just focus on the very first argument that we have in line here. You never want to go out of order when you're creating your paragraphs. Normally with a DBQ, you would actually have 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph, and then 3 paragraphs. And you would write in that order based on your thesis statement. But since we're only writing 1 paragraph, you're only going to focus on this very first argument. So you're going to indent again, and you're going to start your paragraph. You're going to start off your main idea or your topic sentence with 2 things: your source and your argument and how it fits with the prompt. Okay, so what is our source? Our source is from the laws of Manu. And actually, if you did your T-chart like this, who, what, when, where, whoop, how, and why, excuse my handwriting, we know that the laws of Manu was actually written or conspired or created by Manu, who's considered the creator god. Now, we don't know exactly who wrote it, so you could say Manu, But if it's a little too cerebral or mystic for you, then we're just going to say that the laws of Manu is just a document. But for the sake of this T-chart, that's what you would write. What is the laws of Manu? They're a set of laws. When was it created? Between the 1st and 3rd century. Where? India. How did it come to be? Well, we're not really sure exactly where it was written, but how it was utilized, and that's how we can answer this, how it was utilized was to maintain structure and order in a growing dynasty. And why this particular set of laws? It's because it's actually derived from ancient Hinduism. And so the rulers of this time, they wanted to maintain structure and order, so they utilized Hinduism, which was kind of the foundational religion of the time, in order to maintain order. Okay? So we have the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So right now we're just really focusing on these 3 sections because that would be our source. So let's look. All right. So in the 3rd century Common Era, the laws of Manu were used by classical Indian rulers in order to maintain that priests were the ruling, I don't like the word ruling, oops, were the leading class. Okay, so here we have 3 things. We have my source, right? We know when it was written. We know the actual name of the source. We know where it was located. So we have the sourcing down. Now we're going to state our argument. The rulers used the laws of Manu in order to maintain that priests were the leading class. Okay, great. That's a great argument. But does it connect to the prompt? So it definitely connects to my thesis, but does it connect to the overarching prompt? The prompt is asking, how did religion alter social and political structure? So we need to give this particular topic sentence a little bit more depth. So what we're going to say is we're not going to just stop at priests were the leading class, but the priests were the leading class in order to claim religion as the force of order. I'm even going to add in society because that makes it sound better. Okay, so our topic sentence is, in the 3rd century Common Era, the laws of Manu were used by classical Indian rulers in order to maintain that priests were the leading class in order to claim religion as the force of order in society. Okay, so we have our topic sentence. Great. I know the sourcing, I know the argument, and I know how it connects back to the prompt. Great. So now we are going to move on to the next section. The next section includes, let me erase this. Give me 10 seconds. Count to 10. Think of your 10 favorite colors, animals, books. All right. We did it. Okay. So we have our topic sentence. The next section is our transition word. So transition word could be anything that's going to get us from our topic sentence into our piece of evidence. So a great way to transition into evidence is by using something like, for example. You could also say something like, an example is, or to justify this, something that explains that you're going to move into a piece of evidence. So, for example, and then we are going to put a piece of evidence. Your evidence is going to come from the laws of Manu. So you'd have to go dig into the actual text itself and find a line in that particular document and paraphrase it into your DBQ. So I already know which one I want to use. It's actually, I think, line 88, and it explains that priests can be given gifts if they do not dive into the lives of commoners. So I'm going to say that. Priests could be venerated, I'm going to say even if they went below their caste class. All right. Okay, so this is actually from the document, so I'm going to say it's document 1. You always do that at the end of your evidence. And then I'm going to have another transition word or statement. This shows what? So I'm providing an example. I'm saying, for example, priests could be venerated even if they went below their caste class. This shows, and this is where you are going to link to your thesis statement. I'm actually use purple to show linking, okay? So link to thesis. So we're going to say something like this. If priests could be venerated for, even if they went below their caste, this shows that priests were held at a higher political class than their than the rest of Indian society. This demonstrates that maybe priests held the most political power because of their divine inheritance. Okay, so I'm going to remove all this doodle daddle so you guys can see what this would look like if it were an actual paragraph. Okay, so for example, priests could be venerated even if they went below their caste class. This shows that priests were held at a higher political class than the rest of Indian society. This demonstrates that priests held the most political power because of their divine inheritance. Do you see how I actually put my link, my commentary? I put my link into actually 2 different sentences, and that is okay. Your link or your analysis should be about 1 to 3 sentences, depending on what you need to say or need to explain. You should not really go over 3 sentences. 3 sentences is actually kind of the danger territory. Try to keep it to 1 to 2, okay? Okay, so this entire section right here is, if you were in an English class, you might call this your commentary, or you might call it your analysis. But essentially, you are just explaining how this particular piece of evidence from the text, how it connects to your thesis statement, which ultimately connects to the prompt. Okay, so once you have done something like this once, you then need to do it 2 more times. So you are going to go back into the evidence and you need to find 2 other pieces of evidence from the text. Okay? So ultimately, at the end of all of this, Let me erase this. Count to 10 again. This time think of like your 10 favorite bands or artists. There we go. Okay, so ultimately your body paragraph should look like this. Oops. Topic, sentence, transition word, evidence, link. Oops, you should have a transition word there too. Then you should have another transition word, and then another piece of evidence. Then you should have another transition word, and then another link, and then another transition word, and then another, I lost piece of evidence, and then another transition word, and then another link. Okay? You should do this 3 times. Okay. At the end of your last link, you should have your concluding statement. Your concluding statement just rephrases the topic sentence and answers the so what. Meaning, why does this matter? Why does us talking about the caste system and how the priests were put at the top, why does that matter to our understanding of Indian society? So, I'll give you a hint, because since the prompt asks how religion has developed social and political structures in classical India, I want you to state something in the line of Hinduism is the foundation of India. So when you're answering your so what, you should be in line with something like that in the parentheses. Your statement should be something like that. Okay, that's your concluding statement. Now, for your concluding paragraph, this is where things can get really complicated. But if you do it really well, you can get that complexity point. So your conclusion should have 3 parts. The first one should include your counter argument. Now, since we're only referring to one particular argument from your thesis, you're just going to argue in your concluding paragraph one particular argument. So if our argument that we've been talking about this whole time is how Brahmins or priests are placed at the top and how this has changed political and social structure in India, then you need to figure out a different perspective of that particular argument. It doesn't need to necessarily be the opposite of what we've been talking about. It just needs to be something different. So what you could say is that the Brahmin class transcends the caste system since it is so divine and actually has no hold on social or political structure in India. This is just an example, okay? So a counter argument could be that the Brahmin class transcends the caste system since it is so divine and actually has no hold on social or political structure in India. So you could actually just start off your concluding statement like this if you want. If you want to provide more transition, you could say something like, some argue that the Brahmin class, you can even say something like, another concept states, okay, something like that, okay? But essentially you want to have just a different perspective that some people might argue. And this is where you need to really just go into your own mind. You picked 3 arguments at the beginning of this particular DBQ, and you're sticking with them and you're arguing them throughout your essay. in this part, you want to show the reader that you can actually see different perspectives of this same exact theme. So maybe choose an argument that you were thinking about doing, but you felt like was too weak, and so you chose not to. And maybe this is where you put it, is you put it in your conclusion. What I just wrote right here is just one example that you could take and put into your own words. Okay, so B is where we are going to restate our argument. So you just restate your thesis. You put it into your own words, and you put it into different words than how you put in the intro paragraph. And then C is answering the so what. So this is where you show complexity. We did something like this in the concluding sentence of the body paragraph, but here you can really run home with it. This is where you really want to take the entire thesis, prompt, and really make a statement about classical Indian society. So some ideas that I might suggest considering as you're writing this C section is Indian society is determined, I'm going to erase that because that just looks absolutely terrible. Determined by Hinduism. So you could say something like that. Another thing you could also consider is that political and social order was required and Hinduism provided it, similar to China. So in this last section, you can always draw a comparison to another civilization that you've learned about. This shows the reader that you're able to compare and contrast among various civilizations, and actually shows that you're making connections in a really complex way. So these are two ways that I really recommend you consider when writing your C, the section for C. All right. So this is all I've done for you guys. Let me know if you need any other support. You might want to send me an email or a message, but essentially I just want to remind you that this needs to be handwritten and turned in tomorrow. You can get 7 points because that's how many points you could get on the AP exam. And if you're looking for the rubric to see if you're actually meeting the requirements, you might want to check out AP College Board or the Feminist China PowerPoint. These two things you can find on Canvas, and hopefully that helps you out if you're looking for additional assistance. All right, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any other questions, and I look forward to reading your essays tomorrow. Adios.